Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So we'll jump straight in here with this. So Dark Horse have posted basically a sneak peek for the upcoming Kaya one-shot comic. There's not much new here, but it's an equivalent post to what they posted like the day before, basically, about the Kyoshi Warrior comic. Now, that at least had the creative team reveal, which was brand new information. While this doesn't really have anything new, because we already knew the creative team was the same team as the Mako comic. The only real new thing here probably is just that the art is in kind of high quality here for the image. So you can actually like zoom in on it a little bit. You can actually see the details of Kaya a little bit clearer. So you get a sense for like, this is what the young Kaya design here actually looks like. And you can see stuff like, she's got the fingerless gloves on. You can see that she's got the kind of white kind of undershirt thing on. That's more reminiscent of her original concept design from the Book 2 Spirits art book that we saw. So that might be an explanation for the design kind of foundation there. But it's just cool to see the design a little bit closer up. They do have the description, which lined up with what we heard at San Diego Comic-Con. There was some conflicting reports coming out of New York Comic-Con, but it's clear that someone obviously just worded their kind of post a little bit badly. It is Kaya making her way in the world for the first time outside of Republic City. So it's her on a journey, as the cover would suggest. Whether we see Republic City at the start or in flashback to maybe why she's on her journey or whatever, we'll have to wait and see. But that speaks to, I suppose, the fact that there really isn't much new information here. They did reply to someone saying that, like, the book will be announced soon properly with full details, pre-order, that sort of thing. This is just a little peek ahead of what's in the works, something for fans to enjoy now. Now, I don't mind the kind of clarification of the first line. The second line feels a bit rough when you acknowledge that this same teaser that they're officially posting online now was what they showed at San Diego Comic-Con 3 whole months ago and just a few weeks ago at New York Comic-Con. As if like those panels exist in a vacuum that wasn't actually seen publicly by anyone. That's the rough aspect of this that they do need to get a handle on from a communication standpoint in terms of what are you doing there overall? Why isn't there more concrete information here? Like, I think it's a bit of an indictment here that there's no title for either of these books. I think that's the super telling thing, is that like you can't even just, same post, just this is what the book is actually called. That's the really frustrating part for me. That's not here. Just from like almost like a search engine point of view, just get the title out there, even if you don't have the kind of listings up just yet. That way people are talking about it now and they latch on to it when you actually do properly announce it. Just be a little bit better. Only other thing I'll say is just that the Kyoshi Warrior post does say very soon, whereas of course the Kaya comic one only says soon. That would, I guess, imply that the Kyoshi Warrior comic is actually going to be announced and detailed before the Kaya comic. And then because it is a comic series, apparently a 3-issue miniseries and not a graphic novel, it also should be a little bit of a tighter release in terms of like it'll be announced and then come out within the next couple of months. Whereas there usually is a like full 4 to 6 month kind of gap between the solicitation and release for a graphic novel. Meaning that if they say announce the Kyoshi Warrior comic, let's say next week, the comic could be out within like maybe 3 months or something like that. Now, it's probably asking a lot maybe given the way things are, but the last thing I'll say here is just that my speculation is just that I think the comics where we need them is probably February, March, April, May next year. That's when both of these books should come out. I think the intent probably is that the Kyoshi Warrior, as a 3-issue series that will probably release monthly, it will probably cover some of those months. It's kind of hard to properly predict. The Kaya comic is very tough because if it is a little bit longer before they announce it, but still soon-ish, I still think we're maybe looking at, I don't know, maybe April, May as the kind of announced release date. It could be even a little bit later. It'll be very telling in terms of the scheduling for this creative team when this does get announced. Because again, remember, the Mako comic was February this year. So anything past February means it's over a year between books. And, you know, is it going to be a full year and a quarter or what? That's the big question. So moving on from that, just a quick one here on the color by number marketing material one, just to kind of highlight that, like we've seen on some of these before, you have these kind of more kind of like vague things that allude to Avatar Studios stuff. This one just says 3 new theatricals and 3 new series are planned beginning in 2026, the first new content in more than a decade. Now, that's fine. It's cool to see that it actually mentions the right year. 3 new theatricals is directly confirmed information. We know that. That's not just like from rumors and leaks. We know that. No, there was official reports that came out, say, announcing 3 movies. 3 new series is kind of interesting because you'd say theoretically we know about 2 at the moment, Seven Havens plus whatever the next one is. But we know they're working on multiple projects. And so there probably is a 3rd series in there. Is there too much you can read into this? I'm not really sure. But it's just kind of nice to see the marketing material gradually get updated on this book, which is the kind of like the most recently newly announced book that is like furthest into next year. August 2026 release date on this one. Then we get into this very interesting rumor. So Night Edge Media, and I think this is via, was it Daniel RPK? Who is a pretty known source of insider information. So obviously it's one of those kind of like trust my source style pieces of news or rumors, and it's made very clear that that is the case. The core of this is just that apparently Seven Havens has already kind of behind the scenes been renewed for 2 more seasons, meaning we've gone from the already confirmed 2 books, 26 episodes, to 13 episode books, to we now theoretically have 4 13-episode books, because I doubt they're going to change the format of the seasons, and that would mean that we have the Korra style thing, 4 13-episode books. Obviously Korra was slightly different because it was 12, 14, 13, 13, but I assume it's just going to be 13 across the board here. This is cool. I like this if it ends up being true, because I think probably I would say my only concern about Seven Havens up to now is nothing about the plot, is kind of actually just that like they, in a way, they had only announced it for 26 episodes, that like will be kind of started and then done in kind of almost like no time at all after all this waiting. And it's just a series that's much shorter than the other 2 series, whereas like I kind of want an Avatar Studios project to come out and stick around for a bit. And I think it is a good move to actually do something like that, just having more Seven Havens. Now, I think the intent of this is probably that the already announced books are the books that basically will, almost in its entirety, cover the whole mystery angle that is the premise for Seven Havens. What happened at the end of the Korra era? Why is the world the way it is? And I think the idea of the first 2 seasons is that we effectively answer all those questions, resolve all or most of those things, and that would then maybe leave the 2 newly announced seasons to kind of be their own plot after the look into the past, kind of reflection on the past era plot of the first 2 seasons. It will probably give the 2 halves of the show overall a slightly different feel, and I think the obvious speculation here probably is that it at the very least leaves the door open for some sort of a time skip to happen here if you want. And that's just, I think, on people's minds for a few reasons. I think you always think about this stuff when a show gets multiple seasons announced and in batches. And especially because Seven Havens has such like a young main character, or like 2 main characters in this case because of the twins. You do think about like, will they use a kind of gap between seasons as a way to kind of age them up so they're more like the age of the main characters from the other series? That could be another thing to give the 2 like final seasons, I guess, a little bit of a different feel. Kind of a little bit like Korra does in all of its seasons, where Korra has a new plot every single book. Maybe Seven Havens just has the first 2 books and the second 2 books as the more kind of split breakdown. But again, we don't actually know what the full layout of like season 1 and 2 is, like what the kind of thematic difference between the first 2 books of Seven Havens is. Maybe we'll get a lot of the mysteries answered in the first 13 episodes, and the second 13 could be something different. We're not really sure about that overall. But yeah, for now, this is an unconfirmed report. It is one of these just kind of insider source rumors, but very, very interesting to think about, and I'm kind of all for it if they do announce more seasons, because I like the idea that we're actually going to get into a full series, like 4 seasons theoretically. That's cool to me. The other speculation here is mostly just about the Paramount Skydance merger, that like, hey, this might explain why there are kind of projects being announced and why Avatar might be included in that. That sort of a whole idea. The kind of flip side of that is that we do know that the same merger also has led to people like Ramsey Nighto departing the studio, and a lot of job losses kind of also happening. Now, this was obviously expected because there's been rumors of like someone buying Paramount for so long, and I think we always expected that there'd be some sort of a kind of backlash in a way when that happens, because it always happens. Anytime one of these big mergers happens, it's always followed by something like this. Now, none of the reports I think that have come out mention anything negative particularly happening to Avatar Studios stuff. The Aang movie seems like it's still locked in for October 9th. As is mentioned here, Seven Havens potentially now has 2 more seasons, maybe. And I think just the fact that like it's a little bit unproven, but they seem to have a lot of confidence in Avatar behind the scenes, like from a business point of view, as one of their kind of potentially big franchises that they can build around. Hopefully Avatar, the stuff releases and it delivers, and we see that happen. At the very least, I think the only thing I'd say here is just that I think we'll get the first couple of projects, and then I suppose maybe the full scope of Avatar Studios in terms of like all those 3 movies. Like, will we get like the 3rd series? Is that absolutely locked in? We might have to wait and see on some of that stuff, but there's definitely enough stuff that's far enough into production where like it's going to come out. We just have to wait and see. Some people will look at this stuff and think the sky is falling because it's just bad stuff happening around companies related to Avatar Studios. But the reality of it is that we don't have any like direct confirmation that like Avatar Studios is just super heavily affected by what's happened here. There's probably some impact, but like at the same time, we've already been through, like, remember a year or 2 ago, there were layoffs actually at Avatar Studios, and we've kind of come through that. So I never know how heavy or not to react when stuff like this happens, because it almost seems like, to a certain degree, as bad as it is, that many people losing jobs, it is sort of business as usual with these kind of big mergers. And that's just kind of just the weirdness around this. So there's that. We'll get into some Avatar Magic the Gathering stuff, because again, we're in spoiler season, and we will be in spoiler season until November 7th, when we'll know the full set. So yeah, a pretty big day for card reveals today. There was actually a lot revealed, a lot to get through. So for instance, here is a Zhong card, which is just, the art looks really cool. Actually quite a cool card as well. He has a kind of copy spell effect that fits into firebending quite well. Here's the Spirit Water Revival card, which I just think is kind of cool and on flavor. At a very base level, it's 3 mana to draw you 2 cards. If you play into the water bending aspect of the card, you get to shuffle your graveyard into your deck and draw 7 cards, and then you don't have a maximum hand size. It's kind of cool. Here's a June the Bounty Hunter card that, again, gets you a clue token when you sacrifice a creature, and it has an effect when you also draw multiple cards on a turn, which I think is one of the kind of mechanical themes across. It looks like black and blue, which is interesting. This one I want to talk about a little bit more, because it's one of these, it's part of the Avatar kind of past legends kind of cycle of cards. So we've already had Sozin, Roku, and Karuk. Here is the Legend of Yang Chen. So white mythic rare enchantment saga, Legend of Yang Chen, 3 white. The first phase of this saga is starting with you. Each player chooses up to 1 permanent with mana value 3 or greater from among permanents your opponents control. Exile those permanents. 2. You may have target opponent draw 3 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. 3. exile it, return it transformed as Avatar Yang Chen. In the Avatar state, of course, she is a 4/5 with flying, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, airbend up to one other target non-land permanent. So this side is cool, just, 4/5 flyer after waiting a few turns, and just for playing 2 cards in a turn, you get to airbend something, and you can do that every single turn. That's very, very nice, because if you can do this with instance on your opponent's turn, you can, of course, do that as well. You can do this on your turn. It's really, really nice. I love the art as well. Can't wait to see. I assume it'll probably be tomorrow when they update the card image gallery. We will get to see the borderless full art version of this as well, which should look really good. You can see General Old Iron in the back here, which I think is very cool to see. Now, they had to do the comic reference, I think, here, because within just the body of ATLA, the show, Yang Chen doesn't actually tell us anything. We don't learn any information about like what she got up to during her time as the Avatar. They mostly just play on the idea of it's unique for Aang to talk to another air nomad Avatar, and that's kind of what they play into. Whereas with the other Avatars, they play into the mistakes from their past. Whereas in this case, actually, to a certain degree, the conflict incident with General Old Iron is in a way one of the mistakes of Yang Chen's past, which is interesting. As for the kind of flavor of this card, because it's kind of a little bit like, yeah, what's with those effects and then Yang Chen? I think the idea here is that it's mainly the 1 and 2 effects, of course, because the other one is just to transform the card. It's a lot to do with your opponent, dealing with other people. And I think that's playing into the idea of, one, in a way, her conflict with spirits of trying to like appease them and have the negotiations with them, but also her dealings with like people, like high ups, leaders, political figures. She is a somewhat political avatar just because she is a fully realized avatar from such a young age, but she's also super like hyper competent. Like she does know what to do. She tries to get stuff done quite heavily as the avatar. And I think that's what they're playing into here. They're, both of those type of things. It's her different approaches in a way to dealing with spirits, and then in a way her different approach to dealing with human conflicts, and how messy some of them can be. The fact that she could be, in a way, the ultimate diplomat, but sometimes she realizes that, like, oh, that approach doesn't work to just be the nice diplomat trying to be right in the middle of things. Sometimes you do have to lean into the blackmail, spy master side of things. And I think that's what kind of phase 1 is about, is that like it's almost like sowing chaos among your opponents. It's more of a commander card because the effect does so much more on a 4-player board than it does 1-on-1. Because 1-on-1, this basically just says, you get to exile one of your opponent's permanents, and then they get to exile one of their permanents. They're probably not going to want to do that, because it says up to, they don't have to do it. So in most 1-on-1 situations, this is just exile a permanent mana value 3 or greater. But in a 4-player game, it's, oh, I choose player 4, they exile one of their cards. Player 2 has to choose then a player 3 or 4 card, because it has to be their opponents. They can't target you. It's always mentioning your opponents, not you. So that's interesting. The second one, I think, is maybe more about how she deals with the spirits of like trying to be really, really kind of almost fair beyond belief with them, and maybe creating kind of awkward situations type thing. So it's just fun with the avatar, where in a way there's not as much story in the original show about Yang Chen. Whereas at least Karuk, who also we don't learn much about, you get the Ko situation, and that's why Ko was in his card, so that's kind of cool. Jet Freedom Fighter is a fun card. It's hybrid red and white, and this one I think is quite flavorful actually, because what it seems to me to be doing is it's kind of almost showing you the bookends of Jet's life, his time on the show. When he first appears, he and his freedom fighters swoop down and just wreck shop. They take out all those kind of enemies, and it's just no problem for them. And I think that's his initial effect here, dealing damage equal to the number of creatures you control. When he and his full team are together, they can do anything. But then when Jet dies, he dies, and of his freedom fighters, only 2 of them are there with him when he dies. That is Smellerby and Longshot, who are pictured, I think, in the art there behind him. I think that's why they're doing it there. Maybe it worked out in playtesting that for balance reasons, giving 2 creatures counters was the most effective thing, but it also thematically, I think, plays into the character overall. Maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into that, but it seems to work out quite nicely in terms of Jet's first scene in the show and his last scene in the show. Spirit Oasis is a blue shrine, all about drawing cards, pretty nice. Here's some cool cards. The Suki card here, revealed by Covert Go Blue, is nice. So this is a rare Suki from, I guess, the end of the show. 1 white for a 2/4. Other creatures get +1/+1, and then you generate white ally creature tokens on your turn when a permanent leaves the battlefield. You only get to trigger it once. So there's a few limitations here, but the kind of open aspect of this card is that it kind of doesn't matter in what way the permanent leaves the battlefield. So airbending is a way to make this work. You can airbend your own thing to make a token, and she boosts the power of all the tokens. United Front, the other mythic rare here, plays into that. X white, create X 1/1 white ally tokens where X is the number you cast it for, of course, and then you put a counter on everything. So these 2 cards work really nicely together, of course. White seems very clear about what it's doing. It's got that kind of white ally token aspect representing the kind of united kind of forces in a way against the Fire Nation, but it also is airbending as well, which is cool. Extended Art Suki. And then this is the Battle Pose United Front, not Neon Ink. So that's cool. And then Avatar Legends on Instagram revealed this card here. So this is the Waterbending Aang. So we have one that's just Airbender. We had the reveal of the one that has 3 elements but not firebending, and then of course the original card that we saw was all 4 elements. So this is the kind of missing piece to a certain degree. I'm assuming there's probably another Aang or 2 somewhere in the set, probably maybe a 4-color Aang in Jumpstart or something like that. I can see them also having. But anyway, this is Aang Swift Savior, and he transforms into Aang and Law Ocean Fury. So 3 mana for a 2/3 with flash and flying. When Aang enters, airbend up to 1 other target creature or spell. And then he also has Waterbend 8 to transform. So that's cool. That makes complete sense. You've got airbending on the card, but you also have waterbending. And the waterbending facilitates a very, very powerful transformation into the kind of combination of Aang and Law Ocean's Fury, which is a 5/5 reach and trample. When they attack, put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control. And that would include itself, because when you attack, it's tapped, so you're getting that yourself. And then realistically, you've just done waterbending to make the transformation happen, so you're actually putting counters on a lot of stuff. So really leans nicely into the waterbending stuff. As for the airbending effect, this is probably the more unique and kind of maybe powerful aspect of the card, because it allows you to do, it's the combination of flash with the fact that it specifies that you can airbend a spell. Meaning that like you can actually interact with stuff at like kind of instant speed to a certain degree. Like if your opponent casts a sorcery, you think airbending typically is all about like exiling permanents. But you can actually exile like I guess an instant or a spell if you get the timing right, I think. Because I think that's the way it works in Magic, is that like the card does need to kind of be on the field for the effect to resolve, which is I think different than say like how Yu-Gi-Oh would do this type thing, where like if you Mystical Space Typhoon an interaction like this, it doesn't negate. You destroy the card but the effect still goes off. That's not how it works in Magic. So that's the idea there. And we also have the different alternate art treatments here. So here's the scene card for Aang, this flip Aang. I believe this side of the card is the one that actually links in with the other stuff. This would be the top right of the 4 cards that make up the book 1 scene card. We just don't have the one that would go on the bottom right. I'm guessing it's probably a Fire Nation ship card, but we have to wait and see. So that's nice. Here's the elemental frame, which also I think looks really cool. I continue to emphasize that I actually really like this border, this effect. And then, yeah, the last of the 4 Neon Battle Pose cards. They were saving this one because I guess it is the double-sided one. This looks like it's probably going to be like that kind of second headliner card, probably. In terms of it's probably going to be just as rare, probably, as the Brian Kinesco Ang. Maybe not to that extent, but it's a pretty nice card. And then just the contrast of how cool both sides are going to look in foil and stuff like that. This definitely stands out the most to me of these Battle Pose ones. I actually don't think, I maintain, I still don't think the other 3 look super great. But I think it feels a little bit clearer here that it is original art and not just like the outline of stock imagery. But still, very, very cool stuff there. And then I will just end by noting that if you look at the preview stuff, there's actually nothing on the schedule for the 1st and 2nd of November in terms of card previews. Interestingly, there's no outlet that's saying that there will be previews on those days. I'm guessing, based on this, that they are going to probably use the weekend here to probably reveal the Ultimate Guard stuff, because notably this Beetle and Grimm bundle is going to have images and video elements starting November 1st. And to me, if you can reveal Ultimate Guard stuff that's part of this set, that's exclusive, you probably do need to reveal the overall lineup of stuff, because apparently that stuff is out in like 2 weeks. It's out like the pre-release week. So they do need to kind of list all the stuff. So far, like, we only have like glimpses of it from the Spiel Essen convention and stuff like that. We have the listings for what all the products are, but we don't know what specific cards they are and are not kind of covering. And this is obviously where they don't want, I guess, their products to spoil certain creator card reveals or something like that. So maybe that's why they've positioned stuff in a specific way. Maybe we are at the point now where pretty much everything that they were doing has been revealed, hopefully. But yeah, it is notable that like the over the weekend, like, they're kind of stopping the previews to a certain degree. Maybe it's to allow the accessories to be the focus, but we'll see. Either way, I'm excited to see what they do reveal here tomorrow. But yeah, that's been the video. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think the situation is with the 2 upcoming comics? When do you think they'll be announced? And when do you think they'll be announced for release, in terms of release dates? What do you think of this rumor of Seven Havens potentially getting 2 more seasons? What are your thoughts on what that means for, like, I suppose maybe the content of the first 2 seasons versus these potential new seasons? Do you think it's actually going to happen? What's your take on what the merger kind of has done? Has it had any effect? Will it have any effect on Avatar Studios? And what has stood out to you recently from recent card reveals for Avatar Magic: The Gathering? Let me know below, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.